Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to create an optical illusion like this one here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the background. So to make the background, I grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to hold shift while I draw this rectangle so that my rectangle makes a perfect shape. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size of my stroke to about 4 points here, so you can do that here at the top. We'll just go from 1 to 4, okay? And I'm going to change the fill color. Now you can make the color whatever color you want, doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to take the square and I'm going to make a copy of it. So hit Control C, Control V. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the stroke color from black to white. And I'm also going to change the fill color to something else. And then I'm going to overlap the edge of the square next to it so that the white outline covers up the black outline. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these things and I'm going to cover the whole artboard. But as I do it with each square, I'm going to cover the edge of the stroke next to it. So then it's going to create this alternating pattern of colors as it goes across here. And I can just copy this row, Control C, Control V, and then I'm going to offset the colors, and just like I did before, I'm going to cover up the bottom edge with the color in front of it. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and keep copying these. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ellipse tool and I'm going to draw a little tiny circle in the middle of where these squares come together. I'm going to make this first one a black, and then I'm going to make the next one, I'll just copy that, and I'm going to make it white. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to alternate between black and white with this pattern. And on this next row, I'm going to go ahead and offset those circles. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and be done with this background. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my layers, I'm going to lock this layer, and then I'm going to start working on some of these rings for this. Okay, so I'll just use the same colors I was using before. I'm going to go ahead and remove the stroke color from that though. And then I'm going to start by drawing a circle, and I want it to be a perfect circle. So I'm going to go ahead and hold shift when I draw it. Maybe I'll hide this background for a minute. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go to Effect, I'm going to go to Warp and Arc. I'll set that to vertical, and I'll give that 100% bend. I'll click OK. And since I warped the shape, I now need to expand the appearance so that the new shape is now recognized. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down a little bit, but I don't want to warp the dimension, so I'm going to hold shift while I shrink it. Okay, so I'll make a copy of this, and I'm going to change this one. I'm going to make this one black. Okay, so I'm going to line this up so that it covers that little gap here. We don't see that gap anymore, and I want it to be lined up perfectly in the center with this one. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to select these two shapes, and I'm going to use my Pathfinder. I'm going to divide it, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to create a clean edge here. So after I divide it with my Pathfinder, I'm going to ungroup it, so you can right click ungroup. Then I'm going to select the two parts that are black, and I'm going to unite them together. So now it's going to create this new edge for this shape. I'll go ahead and get rid of this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to bud that up, and I'm going to make this one black again. Okay, so now I've got nice clean edge. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of these two shapes. And I'm going to change this one to that other color that I used for it. And I'm going to make this one white this time. Okay. Then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to make a copy of these. Line it up so I leave a little bit of the white exposed, so that I get a thin strip of white and a thin strip of black. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select these, and I'm going to scale it down a little bit because it's a little bit big for my purposes. Okay, so we'll make another copy of this and bud that up. And I might do it one more time here just to make it nice and long. Bud that all up. Alright, so I'm going to scale this down a little bit. We'll shrink that down just a titch. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and then I'm going to use that to cover up the edge. Cover up the edge of this. Okay, so I'm just changing the color so I can see it a little bit better. Okay, so cover up this bumpy edge of those shapes there with this square. I'll go ahead and make a copy of this. And I'll put it here on the opposite side. Cover up that section so we can't see those bumpy edges anymore. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to select everything with my Pathfinder. I'm going to go ahead and divide it. I'm going to right click, ungroup it. And then I'm going to delete everything that is hidden under this square. And you'll see how it gives me a nice clean edge there. That's what we want. It's that nice clean edge on the side of this. So we'll do the same thing here on this side. It looks like I've got maybe a few little spiky pieces that didn't quite get caught. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of those so that that clean edge is all the way across the shape for both sides here. Okay, so now what I'm going to go and do is I'm going to select all those pieces, and then I'm going to group them together. So you can either go to Object, Group, or you can right click and group. Either way, go ahead and group that all together. Okay, so now that we've got that grouped together, we're going to go ahead and warp the shape. So we're going to go to Effect, Warp, and Arc. I'm going to set that to horizontal, and we're going to do 100% bend on that. Click OK. And since we warped the shape, we now need to expand the appearance so that it recognizes the new shape that we made. So we'll go to Object and expand the appearance. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of that shape. So select it, hit Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. And now we're going to reflect the shape. So I'm going to reflect it by right-clicking, Transform, and Reflect. So I'm going to reflect it vertically. And I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to transform, reflect, and the second time I'm going to reflect it horizontally, so it'll turn it upside down. And then what we can do is we're going to bud that up right next to that other half circle that was there. And then what we're going to do is once you got it budded up, we're going to go ahead and group it together. So you can right click, group, and I'm going to maybe scale this down a little bit so it fits inside my artboard. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of this, and the reason we're going to make a copy of this is because we're going to create some dimension to the shape. So to do that, I'm going to hit Control-C to copy, and then I'm going to hit Control-F to paste, so it pastes it directly on top. See how it's pasted right there on top? Okay, so for this one that's on top, I'm going to go ahead and unite all the shapes together so it becomes one solid shape. And you might do that a few times if you see that there are a lot of lines in your shape. I'm going to take this shape here and I'm going to use my gradient tool. And we're going to switch this to radial, so from linear to radial. And I'm going to slide this white cursor over here. And I'm going to slide this over here, so I'll have 3 colors on there. And I'm going to make it okay, so the 2 colors on the side will be black and the one in the middle will be white. and this is going to give this kind of a round looking ring, a three-dimensional looking ring. Okay, so now that I've got everything all set up with my gradient, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my transparency tool. So if you can't find your transparency, just look under window, and we're going to switch this to multiply. Sometimes darken might work better, or if it doesn't quite look right with one of those two choices, you can experiment with the transparencies to get the look that looks right, but usually multiply or darken will work well for this. Okay, so now I've created kind of this three-dimensional shape to my rings here. So I'm going to go ahead and select those two rings, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to group them together, so when I move this, it all moves as one solid piece. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create multiple rings with this ring, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to Effect, we're going to go to Distort and Transform, and then we're going to choose Transform. Okay, so I'm going to make, I don't know, we'll say 10 copies. So go ahead and click that preview button here at the bottom if it's not already selected, and then you can see what's going on. So everybody's shape is going to maybe be a little bit different. So I don't want to give you an exact number of what you should scale it to. You're just going to have to do a little bit of trial and error and see which works best. So for this particular shape, 87% on the horizontal and 87% on the vertical seem to do the job that I needed it to do, but you might have to scale things a little bit differently depending on how big your shape is and what it looks like. But anyway, once you've done that, go ahead and click OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to expand the appearance of the shape so that it recognizes all these new circles that we made. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to select that and I'm going to ungroup it. So that is going to just ungroup all these individual rings, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to rotate every other ring. So I'll just go to every other one and just kind of twist it a little tiny bit so that those matching colors don't all line up with each other, so they're all going to be a little bit offset. So just go to every other one, give it a little bit of a twist, and then I think it'll be good to go that way. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select those again, and I'm going to group them together. And at this point, I can go ahead and bring my background into view. And then what we can do is can set these up on the artboard in some various locations. So I'm going to make a couple copies of this, and you can adjust the size, but just keep in mind anytime you adjust the size that you need to hold shift while you do that so it doesn't distort the shape there. Okay, and I'm just going to throw a few of these little rings on here, and you can put as many of these little designs on here as you want. You can arrange them however you want, but once you've got them all together, then your project should be good to go.